Welcome. In front of me is a XIAOMI Mi 10T Lite, and today I will go over unboxing along with a brief overview of this phone. So this is the box, obviously. Fairly clean, nice looking. So let's pop it open. Now, as you can already see, I did open it up beforehand, so the device will be already set up, but this is basically as you would see when you're first getting into the phone itself. So designed by XIAOMI right out the front. First off, nice thing, I really always like when companies do this, is the inclusion of a case. So popping it out, straight out, we got the case right here. It is kind of different than I expected. Usually they have a clear one. This is, as you can see, a little bit milky. I do have to say I kind of like this more. It makes it look a little bit more clean when you're kind of touching the back. So it doesn't really attract fingerprints and smudges as much as the clear ones do. So nice little inclusion there. Then we got the phone itself, so let's put it to the side. And inside of here, come on. There we go. Just the paper. And in here we got obviously the charger and the cable. So cable, type H, type C with the orange little tip there. And let's pop up the charger, and the charger is a 33 watts, so really nice charger. So that's basically all we get in the box, as you can see. Nothing more in here. So I'm just gonna drop this to the side for now and get into the phone. So let's open it up. As you can see, it does come with this super glossy finish, and I do like it, but it is an absolute fingerprint magnet. So straight off, once I actually unlock it, you can see the display, and that is a, what was it, let me quickly check. So this is a 6.67 inch display, 1080p by 2400, so basically full HD. Let me also max out the brightness. So this is as bright as it gets, and it is a quite nice display, I have to say. Also, it is 120 Hz refresh rate. Now it looks like it's disabled right now, so let's just fix that up. Go to settings, there we go. And display, yep, 60, there we go. Now I really like how XIAOMI does this animation right here. I've seen it on one of the other phones that they released. I think it was the Mi 10T Pro. Usually I have to go around and explain what the 120 Hz or like 90 Hz does. Here you have just an amazing way of showcasing how it affects. So you can clearly see the difference between those two images, where this ball kind of like skips around. It looks really choppy and not very good, while this one moves smoothly. So that is basically what high refresh rate does, but here it is exaggerated. It is, and in normal circumstances, 60 to you will probably look like this, while 120 will look just like the content is literally gliding through everything. It is not as drastic as you can see it right here. But still, the fact that they included 120 Hz on such a device, which this I would say is a mid-range phone, is just so good. So with this being enabled, everything will be moving super smoothly. Now, sadly, this won't be visible on the camera because I am recording at only 60 frames, which anything past this will just kind of be lost. But still, the fact that you can have it and enable it yourself, you will be able just to see the difference there. So moving on, with that refresh rate further on. This is a LCD IPS display. Now sadly it's not going to be an OLED, but still this display right here is, in my opinion, super good anyway. It's fine for the price that it comes in, even more than fine. So still have no problem with it. And it is HDR10 certified, although I believe peak brightness of it is 450, so it's not super bright, not to the point like HDR should get. And also when it comes down to screen to body ratio, it's 84.6%, so fairly nice percentage there. As you can see, you do have a tiny bit of a chin at the bottom right here, and the bezels aren't necessarily the thinnest here, although they are, in my opinion, acceptable. It is as good as I would expect from a device of this price range. So yeah. Now, it also has a 395 pixels per inch. That is due to the fairly decent resolution of 1080p, which basically makes this device really good option for the price that it comes in, just display wise itself. And of the protection of that glass, you have a Gorilla Glass 5 along with a pre-applied film on it. As you can see it right around the camera, this little kind of glow around it, that's basically the pre-applied foil on it. So you don't actually have to buy anything unless you really want to get a tempered glass instead of this plasticky foil that it comes with. And moving further on, we're gonna now touch on the cameras. And at the front we have a single cutout, as you can see it right over here. Yes, I kind of can't, but you can, I expect you can see it fairly clearly. So that's a 16 megapixel wide sensor, and it shoots at 1080p 30, or also slow motion at 720p of 120 frames. Now going to the back, if I flip it over, you will have a quadruple camera setup, as you can see, and this fairly substantial bump. Now this isn't the smallest thing I have seen, and honestly it is quite obnoxious, I would say. It basically has a bump right over here, and then on that bump you have another one, which are the cameras itself actually. And getting out of the aesthetics, which I don't really like, we can actually touch on the cameras itself. So we have a 64 megapixel wide sensor, 8 megapixel ultra wide, 2 megapixel depth, and 2 megapixel macro. Now straight off the bat, I will say that 2 megapixel depth sensor is completely useless on every device that I have tested, and I expect it to be the same way here. And 2 megapixel macro is probably going to be also useless, considering we have a 64 megapixel wide sensor, which will most certainly capture better photos than the 2 megapixel macro. So I would say in reality you have 2 lenses instead of 4, but again, I'll test it later on and you can get a clear example of it, how it actually looks like when you capture photos with it. But all those cameras put together, you shoot at 4K 30 frames or 1080p 3060 and slow motion of 120 and 240. Along with even slower at 720p, you can shoot at 960 frames. So you can get really nice slow motion here. But again, I believe this is probably going to be the same as majority of the other slow motions, where it is about a second of capture at slow motion, and you can't really extend it. I believe only Samsung does actual like continuous slow motion, that you can basically start recording at slow motion for the entire time. This, I believe, won't be the case here. So let's actually launch up the camera. So let's actually get my little plant right here, as I always get for the camera, and we can start off by just capturing a normal photo. So hopefully you can see a little bit from an angle how this will look like, but I'll capture a photo and show it on the screen. So this is going to be the normal sensor. Now normal sensor probably doesn't mean that it's going to be 64, so I'm going to quickly check it also at 64. So this is going to be the highest quality you can get on this device. There we go. So I captured the two normal ones at the moment, and quickly get it in here. So this is the super high resolution, so you can get really close. And keep in mind, for instance, these individual needles, you can see them really clearly. This is zoomed in all the way right now. Can't get any closer, as you can see. And this looks, I would say, really decent. This zoom, I'm not expecting like super sharpness here, but keep in mind how close it can get and retain still enough detail. So I would say this looks good. That's kind of how I would call it. It's a good photo. And then we have the normal one. I believe this captures it at a lower resolution. Yeah, this is the max you can get. And again, try to pay attention to how much detail is in these specific like needles and the white stuff there. It is, in my opinion, looking fairly detailed, and you can see a decent amount of detail in there, like the kind of like the strands and stuff like that. So it does capture a fairly good photo in terms of just pure resolution. When it comes down to just distinguishing the background, that's the depth sensor, I believe, if it's even shooting with it. Let me quickly check compared to here. So it does lose a little bit detail around the edges. Now this is, I believe, without the macro, or not macro, the depth sensor. So let's use it with it, which I believe is whenever you use a portrait, and I'm expecting it to go super wrong. This is usually when things just fall apart. Okay, so there we go. And yeah, like I expected, this just went horrible. So you can, oh, this is the worst thing I have seen so far. Do you see this here? This is what the 2 megapixel did to the photo. So you have this nice line of, and no freaking clue what is happening with the background. It just completely cut it out, and everything behind it is complete blur mess, while everything in front of it is sharp, as it should be. And as you can see, this just looks god awful. There's literally no reason to use portrait when results are looking like this. And this is primarily to do for that god awful lens that basically tries to distinguish what is a background and what isn't. And it does a terrible job at it, as you can see, which is expected for a 2 megapixel trash sensor that have been added just to rack up the count. Now, apart from that, let's go to macro, which is going to be another 2 megapixel trash lens, and I'm already generally expecting it to look terrible, especially compared to the 64 megapixel. But I'm struggling to actually find a macro here. Where is the macro? There we go. So I can already tell that this is going to be bad, considering it is hidden like a sub menu basically. So this is going to be the macro. Let's get a look at it. Now I'm going to first start off by checking how close I can get to the subject before it starts losing focus. I believe this is as far as I need to be from it. So this is going to be the macro lens. And this is as close as it gets. And hopefully you can see it clearly. This just doesn't look good. It is just blurry in general. It does get as close as the 64 megapixel, for instance, especially when you hold it like this. But the detail isn't there, not to the extent that the 64 megapixel did. And just as a comparison, I'm gonna quickly go to that 64 so we can get a nice comparison between them, which was this one. No, it wasn't this one. that's the normal one, so this is the 64. Okay, so here we go. This is a comparison of how it looks like compared to the macro. Keep attention to things like this strand right here, and for instance right here, something that is basically not visible, and the macro shot right over here. Even when you get really close, they just kind of are blurry as hell. So macro, like I said, is crap, and the depth sensor is crap as well. So like I expected, we only have 2 sensors here, and I strongly suggest you don't use them. Try to stay away from actually using these sensors. So yeah, that being said, we can now move on to the next part, which is the actual specifications of this device. So this phone comes with a Snapdragon 750, which is a 5G version. There is no other one, I'm just putting that out there. And it has 2 versions in terms of storage. So you have a 64 GB with 6 GB of RAM, and with the lower end you get UFS storage 2.1, while with the 128 GB and 6 GB of RAM you get UFS 2.2. So just a little bit improved version. Now it still won't be as good as, for instance, UFS 3.0 or 3.1, so just putting that out there. And most certainly it will not approach anything near to NVMe, kind of like the Apple iPhone 12s have, which are just, I would say, some of the best storage speeds that you can get on the phone. So that being said, it also, apart from the storage that it comes with, which is max 128, you can expand it further using an SD card. So you don't actually have to shell out more money for instance, the 128 GB model, because both of them have still the same amount of RAM, and storage can be expanded using a SD card. Also, it has a 4828 mAh battery with a 33 watt fast charger. Again, super amazing that they decided to include an actual good charger compared to like other brands that just decide to give you just some real trash charger. I'm talking about Samsung, for example, or iPhones that just don't include a charger at all. So yeah, hands up, really nice that they include that little brick right there. And now moving on to the last part, which is just like general things that you probably won't see. It comes with NFC, so you can pay with the phone itself. It does have a fingerprint sensor, but it is not under display. It is side mounted right over here, as you can see on this protrusion, or it's kind of concave surface. So you do have a fingerprint, and also you do have an infrared sensor right up here, this first bigger dot. So you can use this phone as basically a remote control to control things like your AC, your TVs and stuff like that. So personally, I don't really use it, but I really like to see it on the devices. A lot of the Chinese phones do include this, and it is, sometimes you do have a use for it. I personally did myself whenever I needed to turn something on or off and I didn't have a remote. You just kind of pop into the app, set it up quickly, just select what brand of device you're trying to interact with. If you can choose a model even, and automatically it will allow you to just use it as a full-fledged remote for it. So really nice thing, even though, like I said, might not be as useful to majority of us, it still does have a use from time to time. And then lastly, the thing that I'll mention are the colors. So we have 3 different versions. We have the Arctic Blue, Pearl Gray, and Rose Gold. Now this, I believe, is, let me quickly check. This is the Arctic Blue. So you can see it right over here. So yeah. And just flipping it over, you can clearly see how it looks like now. Apart from it being an absolute fingerprint magnet, it kind of looks almost like a mirror with the exclusion of it reflecting light in all kinds of different like weird ways. As you can see, that's the light that is right above, and just kind of gets weirdly reflected. Now normally it would look like this. So yeah, now the device is really nice, I have to say, and I do kind of like it, especially for the price of $299. This is one of the better devices I would say you can get at the moment. It does have everything that I would personally like from a device, minus the thing that I really like, which is a curved display. It's just flat, but still 120 hertz the refresh rate makes up for that without any kind of hitch. So yeah, and lastly, before I actually finish off, I will go over ports. So we do have a headphone jack, which is a rarity. We do have a Type-C, which is really nice. Some of the budget devices still forget that Type-C exists already. Speakers, and along with a tiny little microphone right here. Then at the top we have that IR sensor that will allow you to use it as a remote. Microphone next to it, SIM tray, and then power key along with volume rockers, and at the back just cameras, flash, and branding along to 5G. And lastly, let's put it into the case. And I do like the case. So obviously it will protect the camera a little bit, so it creates even bigger bump than it already had, but you at least won't scratch it when you're putting it on a table, so that is nice. Outside of that, you don't even see the smudges that were already on the phone, which is really nice touch there because of that case. So I really like the frosted approach to the casing, which just removes all the smudges even though they're still under there. And overall, the thing that I like more about this case is the fact that it isn't including these super harsh kind of like bumpers at the edges. A lot of the cases that come with the devices, they have this kind of like protrusion here to protect the display. This one is fairly minimal, but it's enough to protect your display from being scratched, obviously. And as you can kind of see it at the angle. So it is there, but it is nowhere as intrusive as it is on some other cases. And this case is not one of the better ones that I have that I've seen included with the devices. Now that being said, if you found this video helpful, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and thanks for watching.